I'm Alex Brody. I'm the Director of Meetings, and it's great to welcome you all back to the AUSA headquarters. As you can see, we have a great crowd with us this morning to hear our very distinguished speaker. First, I want to thank our 4-star sponsors, General Dynamics and Leonardo DRS, as well as our 3-star sponsor, Govini, and 2-star sponsors, Leidos, KBR, and Alliant Defense for their support of the coffee series. We can't thank you enough for your continued support of AUSA over the many years. Please give our sponsors a big round of applause. Simply put, we can't do these events without our great industry partners. If you're interested in learning more about being a sponsor at any of AUSA's events, please connect with Emily Call, our sponsorship manager. She's here out at registration, and she can talk with you about all the great benefits of being a sponsor at AUSA. We appreciate the presence of the general officers and command sergeants major participating with us this morning as well. It's always great to have you join us. I'd also like to acknowledge congressional staff that are here with us today. Your efforts on behalf of the Army, soldiers, and families are greatly appreciated. All right, with that, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Association of the United States Army, General Robert Brown.
All right. Well, morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. A great crowd, and understand why with our distinguished guest this morning. And it's great to have you here. Really, I don't think we could have a more timely guest than we're talking about acquisition, technology, and logistics. Absolutely on the forefront of everybody's mind right now and critical. So welcome to the Honorable Brent Ingraham. He has one of the toughest jobs, I got to say, in the Army. So many responsibilities, I couldn't even memorize it all. You know, any one of these I'm going to talk about would be a full-time job. So obviously he's Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology, and the Army Acquisition Executive. Was sworn in 22 September 2025. The duties of the ASALT, so he serves as the Army Acquisition Executive, Senior Procurement Executive, Science Advisor for the Secretary of the Army Senior Research and Development Official with principal responsibility for Army logistics. Just a few things there, right? And unbelievable responsibility. No doubt, we were talking earlier, he's working 7 days a week, long hours right now. With all those responsibilities. Previously, he performed the duties of Deputy Undersecretary of War for Acquisition and Sustainment, and he served as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Platform and Weapon Portfolio Management, overseeing major weapons platforms for the Department of Defense. Before entering federal service in 2010, Mr. Ingraham worked in the automotive industry as a powertrain engineer. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from University of New Hampshire, and he also has received numerous prestigious awards for his service and leadership. So please join me in welcoming Brent Ingraham.
Thank you.
I'll give you the opportunity for some opening comments.
Excellent. Well, first of all, good morning. It is really an honor to be here. I've got to see a lot of familiar faces, friends, mentors, really some leaders who have helped not only shape acquisition, but the Army for the last, I don't know how many years when I look around the experience in this room, but it's tremendous. So first of all, thank you all for shaping and leaving an Army that, in an Army acquisition team in great shape that I fall in on. Look, and I don't do this alone. Sitting up here, if you don't know, Lieutenant General Rob Collins, my battle buddy, and I could not do it without him every day. As you mentioned, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of jobs, and so, Rob, thank you every day for what we do. As you mentioned, General Brown, right? There's a lot going on right now, and so along with all of the operational things happening in the world today, we sort of went through a major acquisition reform last fall. And so really what I want to do this morning is talk to you a little bit about, from my view, where I sit, what I see every day, what I see for the changes sort of we made, that hopefully you are all seeing firsthand as well. That you're seeing sort of the changes that we've tried to put in place to ensure that we truly have capabilities that our warfighters need at the time that they need them at. And so that's really been sort of the focus and goal. So, I'll start there, right? So really, if I think about sort of things in front of me where I sit, a couple of key shifts. First, in the environment, right? There's a significant change in sort of the environment, starting right from the very top of our leadership on down. Secretary Hegseth gave us a sort of mandate last fall to put acquisition on a wartime footing. And so, we can talk about a little bit what that means. When you hear words like speed to relevant capability, I'll say this: that's not just another slogan. And so we took sort of the mandate given to us by Secretary Hegseth and really took a hard look in the mirror from an Army position and said, do we have it right? Are we organized right? Do we have the right culture? Do we have the right pieces and parts in place? Do we need to remove processes out of the way to truly get capability to the field faster? And so you could say it's another slogan. One of the things I did, and I will never remember these, so I wrote these down, was I pulled together, I don't even have them here in front of me right now, sort of the slogans from the 1980s on acquisition reform. Acquisition reform is not new. And so when you think about sort of the slogans from the 80s, it was fly before you buy, I think was one of the key ones from there, right? And then as we got into eliminate mil specs and costs, better buying power, right? So there's been a number of things that have been brought forward over sort of the history of AC reform to try to get after this, right? Getting capability faster to be much more responsive. And so I think we all know that it takes a couple of key things to make that happen. So it starts with this requirement piece. If we think about the three legs of the big A acquisition stool, right? So you've got requirements in there. You've got sort of, acquisition reform and strategy, and you've got budget. And all those three things have to come together. And so that is really, when I think about sort of the AC reform we've done, and I'll talk a little bit about, we've gone from PEOs to PAEs, what all that means, and how we've sort of changed the plumbing and the wiring inside the Army. But really, it's about bringing those three legs of the stool together so that we can be much more responsive to what the field's asking for. And so I would say it's from where I sit, it's not just a new slogan. I think we're seeing some real change in how we think about the challenges, how we align, how we balance requirements, trades, risk, and really bringing what I'll tell you, you're bringing to the forefront of the equation right now is operational risk, right? So how does operational risk fit into the mix? So when I think about the sort of mandate that Secretary Hegseth gave us, there was a lot of work that had sort of been going into thinking about how to realign and build out, portfolio acquisition executives, right? Congress had been thinking about it. We saw the Speed and Forge Act had been out there, right? We've been working on it inside the department, but it was really a way to think about, how do we get after the things that were broken? And I took a real clean look in the mirror, right? I'll say fragmented accountability was number one. Right? Where do sort of decisions live, and where do we push decisions down to? When I think about, we tend to incentivize for perfection over fielding. At times, in all of these, you can find, a niche program that, maybe fell through on an edge case of this. But when you really looked at a whole, there was a number of areas there where we saw challenges. And so really, what does it mean? Time matters now, right? When I think about the ability to not have something in the field, not to get something in our soldiers' hand quicker, based on the sort of the dynamics on the battlefield we see today. Our acquisition system, the way we were structured, was not built to sort of manage and change as quick as the dynamics on the battlefield are. Right? We've seen that play out in Ukraine. We've seen that played out in Israel. We see that playing out right now in current operations, where the dynamics change quickly, and we made an acquisition system that can be just as reactive as those battlefield changes. And so, that really is what drove us to think about changing sort of, rewire and replumb Army acquisition. And so, standing up what we call 6+1. So 6 going from our 12 PEOs down to 6 portfolio acquisition executives. +1 is called the PIT, and I'll talk a little bit about what the PIT is, our Pathway for Innovation and Technology. And really, the 6 Ps is where sort of the accountability now rests. Right? They have the authority. They actually dual report to General Dave Hodney, who is our T2COM commander, requirements side of the Army, and then to me from the acquisition side. Why is that important? Just talked about sort of the idea of you got to make sure requirements, acquisition, and budget all come together to move fast. And so, what are we really doing? This puts that responsibility at the PAE. This is really forcing the requirements writers and the check writers to sit at the table and argue about it and work it out up front, instead of doing sort of a serial where, the traditional process where, the requirements community would write a 200-page document with requirements that may not be feasible, technology that may not be ready, or may be very cost prohibitive based on trying to put all those things together. We tend to get thrown over the wall to the acquisition community. Sometimes we catch it well, sometimes we might drop it, but we pick it up quickly and try to run with it. And what that didn't necessarily include always was, some of the industrial realization that we have, right, with some of the challenges that we have in the industrial base relative to supply chains and constraints, and all the way from starting at raw materials and how we think about what we need to onshore so that we can sustain and produce and build the capabilities at the speeds we need to. So this partnership with the PAEs, where those responsibilities are alive, dual reporting to General Hodney and I, brings sort of that ability to make those trades, whether it be requirements, whether it be how we think about the acquisition strategy, even make requirements, resource trades across their portfolio at the PAE level, driving those decisions down versus, I think most of you have probably been in this sort of industry or lived inside the Army or, another service, worked inside the Pentagon system. That when you try to drive those decisions up, where you need to make those sometimes small trades to get a capability out the door, that could take months to work up through the layers of bureaucracy till it gets up to my level or somebody's level that can make that decision trade. Try to push those decisions down now to the PAEs. So that is why we rewired and replumbed. That's more than just sort of a change in the internal environment, right? There's a cultural change there, right? That's going to change how we do things.
Yeah.
And so I see it happen every day. Guessing if you ask General Collins, he would tell you he sees it happen every day. But understand, that's a cultural change we're trying to shape and make. And so hopefully you start to see that in industry soon. And so, when I think about what's important, that's really what 2026 is about. We've made those changes. We've put all the right plumbing and connections in place. And now we got to go execute and be able to demonstrate that. So that's sort of the first thing when we think about establishing our 6 PAEs. Those PAEs aren't just picked for random. They actually align with the Army warfighting concept. So how is the Army going to go fight? We've aligned our PAEs to fight in the PAEs so they can be in that same fight. Talked a little bit about financials too, right? So one of the other things we've done inside this whole shift is really actually shift and think internally about how we budget and do funding inside of the Department of the Army. We've gone away from we've changed that process so that that process aligns with the portfolio acquisition executives and the Army warfighting concept as well. And so now we've finally got requirements, acquisition, and budget all aligned using the same terminology, so that we can all be on the same page, right? With the right accountable person in place to be able to make those decisions, make those trades, um, as we move forward. And so those structures are now in place. We are working through, I think, the processes to ensure those are all in place. And like I said, starting to see some success inside. And hopefully on the outside, you will all see that as we go forward.
That's a great lead in to the questions. The audience, be ready with your questions. I'm going to ask a few, but all the areas really appreciate that you brought up. I know we'll have lots of discussion on one. You mentioned T2Com, and I want to, as we look at that's a critical relationship. Well, T2Com, of course, is brand new, Transformation and Training Command, brand new concept. And there was some struggles before. Was Army Futures Command with ASALT? What with that relationship, ASALT with the new T2Com? How do you see that, in the transformation, and how critical is that in driving acquisition reform?
So it is the linchpin in the process right now. Absolutely. And so what I can tell you is General Dave Hodney has been a tremendous partner. I've probably talked to him more on a given day than I talk to anybody else inside the department. There is zero daylight between Dave Hodney and I on a given day.
Yeah.
But why is that important? Because it's critical, right? When we think about how we make trade-offs, right? As we're thinking about how we lay out the next capability program, the next solution, doing that in partnership with T2Com is exactly where we figure out where those trade-offs can happen. And so, one of the things, if I said configuration steering boards, which is something that the ASALT and the vice chief used to do to ensure programs were we're looking at all the the trades and balance. Those would happen on I don't know, once a year basis. Doug probably could tell you as well. Right, once a year we would happen for a major program. We've there's in the Speed and Forge Act, new terminology came out. It's now Capabilities Trade Council. Think of it as a CSB, though it's traditional, but it's a new term. It would take months of build up to these everyone in the room, right? And what I'll tell you is decision space was very limited by the time you got there, right? This was shaped through, councils of colonels and general officer steering committees, right? And it gets shaped up, and by the time it gets to, at that point, General Hodney and I, it's all shaped, right? That doesn't happen anymore. So when there is something that a PA brings up that's a concern, or we see a trade, and I want to talk a little bit about data, because that's actually what's probably made the entire organization the most uncomfortable right now is data. But when we sort of get the sense that we've got some sort of friction between requirement and acquisition that could drive a fielding decision, we do a CTC the next day. There is no build up of preps, right? No, none of this. We're going to spend groups trying to get to a consensus and get a a suboptimal solution. We bring in the raw data, we throw it on the table, and we have the discussion, and we do it real time.
It sounds like you almost cut out a layer. Having been in TRADOC before, you cut out a layer that was causing issues before with the combination training and transformation and training command to get ideas moving faster and eliminate some of that. Sometimes there was confusion on the requirement, on who was driving what. Sounds like you cut out kind of a layer, and that's what.
So I think if you ask Dave Hodney, and I don't remember his exact number that he said, but he'll tell you he went from 20 plus organizations that were driving requirements in the Army to 6 now. right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's much more streamlined
Yeah,
where requirements are coming from. But as you think about then how you lay that into sort of the portfolio, and the other thing we think about when we think about trades now, right, is this is more about a portfolio review, right?
Mhm.
We had been really good for the last 40 years, still are today, right? And I'll tell you that I think maybe I'm biased, but I think the Army's the best at how you actually manage individual programs from a cost schedule performance perspective.
Mhm.
Army does a tremendous job. We got great PMs, great POs that establish that. When we think about what that tends to drive, is very siloed programs where the integration comes together way too late in the process.
Mhm.
And so what this is really driving towards is how you're ensuring some of that integration is happening up front because you're doing it from a portfolio look, right? An individual capability doesn't necessarily deliver effects on a battlefield. It
Mhm.
is a sort of a integration of a capability of or integration of a variety of programs that build a portfolio that truly is what delivers the effects we need. And
Mhm.
so that's really what this has gotten after is how you build these portfolios such that it's not only how the Army's going to fight, but sort of the variety of programs that have to be linked together to deliver end-to-end effects on the
That makes
battlefield.
a lot of sense. From 20 to 6, aligned by warfighter functions. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Secretary of War declaring acquisition is now a warfighting function, and it's a significant. What does that mean in practice, and how is it affecting the culture of the acquisition enterprise that you mentioned earlier? That change in culture with it being a warfighting function now.
I'll use the words operational risk. Um, so it really is time matters,
Mm.
right? And so this is where we start to see um, when we think about sort of cost, schedule, and performance, we now bring operational risk in that. The risk of not having something on the battlefield when our soldiers need it, right? You know, I'll use the words delay is not neutral anymore. The ability to um, not have a capability delivered when they need it that could, a capability that can't be optimized for the change of the change on the battlefield
Mhm.
based on the change in dynamics. That's really what this means, right?
Mhm.
Is we
Mhm.
expect our soldiers to be dynamic on the battlefield, change based on the way the operations change every minute, every second, every hour on the battlefield. We got to be able to be that reactive from an acquisition
Mhm.
perspective as
Mhm.
well. And so I talked a little bit about data. I want to highlight that piece of it. One of the things I drove day one when I got in the seat was that data. And so I talked about data being the thing that's really driving the most discomfort inside of the acquisition organization right now. And so we established something we just call ASAult Live now, but it's really the ability to see across the entire acquisition enterprise
Mm.
where we truly are from a cost schedule performance perspective.
Mm.
We didn't really have that before, where we could see every single program every day, exactly where it was. And so, what I will tell you is I see every, whether it be an ACAT 3, ACAT
Mhm.
4 program, I see on a daily basis um, live, right? And so, as sort of a dashboard with all this data coming in, and we've been able to put the appropriate software tools around it that allows us to truly understand how programs are doing,
Mm.
right? And when we think about sort of this integration problem we tend to have, right? It's usually not the ACAT 1 programs, right? It's not the necessarily where I am with the next major weapon system. It's usually an ACAT 3, ACAT 4 program that is like the linchpin between connecting a couple of those systems together that bring us to a halt.
Mm.
The problem is, and love you all to ask Doug Bush's opinion of this as well. He's sitting here, right? But as as an AAE with thousands of programs across the Army portfolio, understanding every day what those ACAT 3 and 4 programs are
Yeah.
doing or how they're being managed or are they on track or over budget is an impossible task, right? And so one of the things now that we have a centralized data and I can see all the acquisition programs, being able to understand, you start to marry those programs up inside of each of the portfolio, where those impacts are, right? So when one program slips a test, was supposed to go to a test range, and now it slipped a week. How does that affect, the program that's relying on that part showing up? And what are those sort of snowball effects down that says, oh, we're now not going to get that capability to the warfighter for a year from now. That's where we see time being critical going forward. And so I can see that data live now. And so when I down to my my PM, my CPE, my PAE, they're all seeing it live with me, right? Secretary of the Army is seeing it live when I see it. General George is seeing it live when I see it, right? So there's no more hiding data. There's no more. It is upfront. And when we start to see those sort of schedule slips or cost overruns or delays that are going to have an impact on us, it allows us to make decisions then, not 3 months, 6 months later when those decision spaces close down. And so
That's a big culture change.
it is
though,
a
you were
huge
talking
culture
about.
change,
Huge,
right?
yeah.
And I bet if you went and asked, all of you from industry, next time you're with your PM counterparts within the Army, ask them about ASA Live. Ask them if the boss sees their data as early as they do. They will tell you. I think they'll tell you most days I'm wearing them out because tend to probably know more about as much about their programs now as they do. But it's the fact that we have data, right? And so it's tremendous to have sort of the ability to link some of those tools together to be able to sort of manage the enterprise, make those trades, to truly get after things faster.
That's great. You also mentioned, it's really curious and sounds fantastic, that pathway for innovation and technology that connects soldiers at the tactical edge. Why is soldier feedback so critical to the whole process?
So what I would say is, why we've made all of these plumbing and wiring changes inside, right? We shuffled the deck chairs around and how we go after that. None of that truly affects how we think about innovation. And so when I think about innovation, our problem has never been, do we have great ideas, right? I don't think we have an innovation problem. The problem is how you then integrate that innovation and how you scale it. And so the pit is established really to do that. So when I say 6+1, the plus one is the pit, our pathway for innovation and technology. And so this is really about putting acquisition officers on the front line. Some of my best, 06 PMs are on the front line, working closely with the combatant commands in the Corps to figure out what do they truly need, how we can bring some new innovative capabilities, but then think about how we roll those back into sort of the program scale, right? And so I think look at it's the age-old problem that we currently have, right? And so when I think about it, bring a new innovative tech into the system, which organizations like DIU and the works of the the AF works, the soft works, all of the ideas, right? It's not just what is the innovative tech in there. We bring it in, and either we then develop it in sort of the pristine environment in the lab first, right? We don't actually get it out in the hands of the soldiers where they get to break it, really get some feedback early on before you've locked in a production line or locked in a final designs. We bring it in the lab where we may not get the real world environment, right? We may not use it the way soldiers really want to use it. And so PIT was really about how do you get out in front? How do you really get in the dirt, get in the hands of the soldier, let them give some of that feedback so companies can quickly go back and think about how you do that, how they may change to be more adaptive, more responsive to the way the soldier wants to use it. The key then is how we scale it. And so the PIT then helps transition that to now our portfolio acquisition executives who can then scale it. Do we still have a challenge here? We do, right? You all know how the money works, right? So when I find that innovative tech, I put it in a palm cycle. 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, we finally get a budget. And, then I can actually scale it. By that point, that tech may be may not longer be the tech that I really need on the battlefield. It may not integrate into the systems that we need. And, for small companies, waiting 2 years for the government or 3 years for the government to come up with money is a really hard thing to do, right? You've moved on, right? Or you've gone a different direction. And so one of the things, a couple of things we're trying to do different, that was started, a year or two ago was first of all budget line consolidation, right? With how we think about sort of flexibility in the current budgets we have. We've started what we call our Fuse program recently, and we did this at AUSA last fall, right?
Yeah.
The annual meeting, right? And so if you don't know what we did there with the Fuse program is, we held at the event, we held a Shark Tank-like event. So we had some problem areas. We came out to industry and said, these are the areas and people that we have challenges, right? Problem statements. And industry could come forward and do a sort of a Shark Tank event to pitch their ideas, right? And we actually had soldiers that would have to use it. We had VC companies. We had a variety of people there that would sort of rate you in your Shark Tank. The idea behind that is then we were going to take 8 of those companies, give them a small amount of money. I think it was $52,000 a piece. But 2 weeks later, they had to show up with our soldiers in the jungle, get their gear in the dirt, and really get feedback to try to solve the problem sets. And great event. I think we had well over 300 companies that came and wanted to pitch their ideas.
Huge success.
And all 8, 2 weeks later, showed up with kit and learned a tremendous amount about their kit and how soldiers really want to use it.
They will not hold back on the feedback. So
I'll
let you know. No doubt about that.
Feedback has never been a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Feedback has never been a problem.
It's how early you get it.
It's how early you get that feedback. But what's interesting is, there's a couple of companies, 2 of the companies in particular that I will highlight that were able to take that feedback, put it into their product early on before they had locked down final design, locked down sort of how they were going to lay out their manufacturing facilities, how they were going to actually manufacture, right? Sort of everything from the type of materials they were going to use to, supply chain, how they would be much more adaptive to change in requirements, right? It's, more modularity into their designs. And so, that helped industry learn exactly what we were trying to do. And so, now that's an ability to scale as we look at those opportunities going forward. And so that's how I see the pit being for us, is really the ability to bring new tech to the front line, soldiers' hands on it. You've heard about General George and sort of talk about what we're doing in transformation and contact with how we bring that capability in, get that feedback early, drive it back into the innovation cycle, but also drive that demand signal industry of where we're looking to go, and then more budget flexibility so that we can hopefully start those programs sooner and not wait 3 years to get money rolling out the door.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's go to the audience questions.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My name is Ross Duckworth. I'm retired from the United States Marine Corps. I always expect everybody to stand up when I say that, and they never do.
Except for Phi. Yeah.
I started my career at the Marine Corps Systems Command. So.
Oh, good for you. Thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today. Much appreciated. If you are able, can you share with us what's going on with the potential replacement for the Bradley? It seems to have more stop and go than I-95. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Right. Clearly, if you haven't, we've all seen, the media posts for a couple days, right? Over the last couple of weeks, we put out an RFI looking at, sort of thinking about this, how we think about production of capabilities in the future and the flexibility that we need, the ability to produce at scale. And so a lot of people attain that to be just about the XM30, the Bradley replacement, but that's not what it was about, right? It's in general of how we think about all of our programs that we have out there right now. I think, there's a number of industry days that have either just happened or are happening right now. We've got a lot of new program starts, right? Besides just XM30, right? Common Tactical Truck, Camel, Mobile Tactical Cannon, right? There's a variety of new programs, and so in general, I would say XM30 is still on a path, right? We've got two great vendors that are building us prototypes. They will go to a TIC unit this summer, and that's leading to then what the next steps of that is sort of down select and scale production as fast as possible. And so we are still on track. So if it looks like stop and go from the outside, it really isn't. I think you could probably ask the two vendors. We are hard on them to make sure they're delivering this summer for the two for the prototypes that we've bought and plan to put into a TIC unit.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm Dom Menadeo with Inside Defense. Given there's likely a supplemental request coming soon for critical munitions stockpiling, how would you want the Army to benefit from that, and which exquisite capabilities do you think need the additional dollars most? Thanks.
So I'm not going to get in front of where potential budgets, whether it be 27 budgets or if there's going to be a supplemental. What I'll say is this: the Secretary Feinberg has been tremendous in leading the Munitions Acceleration Committee, the MAC. And it's really been this push about when we think about some of our most exquisite weapons, about how we scale those to support not only where we are today, but allies and partners and what we need in the future. And so I don't know if many of you saw this, but just last Friday we awarded the Patriot PAC-3 MSC contract, multi-year. There's a multi-year authority we got back in 23. In the last NDA, we got a 7-year multi-year for that capability. It is critical. It is something we need, and we awarded it. Would we love to scale it higher? Absolutely. I think you've heard that. That's been sort of loud and clear all the way from the White House that we need to produce more. And so when I think about sort of the capabilities that the Army truly needs from a munitions perspective, the ability to continue to produce and scale things like Patriot, Prism, long-range precision fires, absolutely are key munitions that are critical. And again, Secretary Feinberg has done a tremendous job working with sort of the industry CEO on how we can scale those capabilities.
Hi, Dan Shear, also from Inside Defense. Thanks for doing this. Just to kind of follow up on that question, Undersecretary Obadal the other day had talked about needing some more flexibility for funding for those critical munitions. Can you just sort of talk about what kind of flexible funding that the Army is sort of trying to push for, and what additional authorities do you all need from the Hill?
So I think in general, when Undersecretary Obadal talked about flexible funding, it was very broad, right? And it was broad from the sense of everything I just talked about. With when there's a capability out there, we want to go faster, right? Palming for it, waiting 2 years for a new start, and to get the budget becomes a challenge sometimes when we want to try to go fast, right? I don't think any of us thinks waiting 2 years is a way to go fast. And so the ability to move money around in a given fiscal year is key as we see new capabilities come up, right? We have some of those authorities today, right? In fact, the Army has recently used those authorities, something called Rapid Acquisition Authority, right? Where the Secretary of War gets the ability to move some money around to support operational needs. Those are all limited pots of money. that we have. It's actually not even a pot of money; it's authority. We remove, move money around between programs in a given year to exercise those things. But I think overall, that's the sort of flexibility we're talking about, is when there is either an operational, sort of need, or a new capability comes up where we need to pivot. Having that flexibility to move funding either inside a portfolio or across portfolios would be critical to ensure that we can move sort of at the speed to deliver sort of on the capabilities that our warfighters are asking for on the front lines.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Trish Martinelli, I'm the CEO of The Difference. We're a small consultancy that helps small businesses and emerging technologies navigate their unique pathway to the Pentagon procurement. And sir, it's too complicated. It is too complicated. I would love for you to put me out of business, so please think about it. I do have a question and a request. So the question up front is, how do you define innovation, and is it a critical warfighting skill that all of the J staff has to master? So that would be my first question. And the request is, I would love it if I could go to one place and find all of the upcoming innovation days, or I'm sorry, industry days, and be able to plug into that 90 days in advance. We have small businesses that are meeting those critical technologies, but they don't know where and when to show up for decision makers that have that procurement authority. So that's my question and my request.
So to answer your question, right, do I think the entire J staff or inside the Army, the entire G staff needs to be aware of sort of innovation, what it means, define it, drive it? No, I don't, right? In fact, that's exactly why we stood up our pit, right? That we have one place that industry can come to, understand sort of what are the areas of innovation that our soldiers need, what the Army needs on the front line, what those exercises that you can participate in, what are those transformation and contact that can be rolled into, how we think about bringing that through some of our X-Tech enterprise pieces, and how you can start to bring that in. So trying to get there with our pit, that is the exact function of that. It is then the pit with a bunch of really smart people that understand not only the tech, but how to scale it, right? The acquisition officers that do this for a living, they know how I take that new widget software capability and I get it through the process so that I can produce it at scale and get it into integrated in the field. That is where the pit ties back to the PAEs, right? Depending on which portfolio it falls in, to actually scale that. And so absolutely, one place is the pit when I think about innovation. Understanding industry, potential industry days, 90 days out. Let me take that back and work on that one. I hadn't really thought about how we sort of combine that all into one area, right? I would, if I was going to be the tell you what I would, probably what people would tell me to say is sam.gov, go to that, right? But I understand, trust me, of someone that's used sam.gov before, it's not very useful or user friendly. So let me see if there's a way that we can think about that. And maybe I can't do it for the entire department, but from an Army perspective, as we think about how we do industry days and roll that out, that we sort of compile them somewhere on the Army side to give you that heads up.
Good morning. I'm Bradley Saul with the American Council of Engineering Companies. We help represent design professionals who help build physical infrastructure. I had a broader question about the status of the revolutionary FAR overhaul, the overhaul rewrite of the federal acquisition regulations for the defense and industrial base to understand the kind of the rules of engagement and the procurement rules going forward. A lot of the executive order was about providing flexibility. We were one of the industry associations that were at the Secretary Hegseth's speech at Fort McNair on the Arsenal of Freedom. Would love to work on those, using those flexibilities and the cultural change of both the 1102 community and industry and making that happen. And specifically, we've worked with Jordan Gillis a little bit on the physical infrastructure. Usually it's been the Corps of Engineers that are providing a lot of that infrastructure. Some of the design and construction authority now is more flexible, where Army Material Command or others could provide the infrastructure, both in facilities, power, communications, and these sorts of things. So if you could provide some thoughts on the process of the next steps of that resolution if our overhaul, the class deviations from February 1st, and what you see the path forward, and then the infrastructure piece.
So on the FAR overhaul, absolutely, that's sort of been critical as we think about sort of what processes we can remove out of and refine inside the department. I can tell you inside the Army, please don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I think we've gone from 370-ish pages of FAR requirements down to less than 100, right? So we are doing a significant amount of overhaul on those processes. And but we're not done, right? There's more to do as we continue to work through this to help refine it. And then absolutely, you hit on a couple of key things that I like that that I'll highlight on, right? You highlight on a lot of work that we're doing across the Army, especially with our our organic industrial base and how we think about a number of areas there, especially around sort of power and energy and there's a lot of initiatives that are happening in that space. We have been working closely, I think, much closer between USACE, AMC, and EI&E to get after sort of making sure that those sort of projects and areas that need to go faster, truly go faster, that are also considered in this sort of wartime footing. Because I'm not sure they have been considered that way in the past. And so we have done a lot of refinement in that area. And I think, if you didn't see, we had put out, an example of that was at Pine Bluff Arsenal, right? So at Pine Bluff Arsenal, we had some land that we looked at doing an enhanced use lease on, in I don't know about within 60 days awarded an enhanced use lease to a company to build where they're going to bring an investment of about like $1.3 billion in to build a new energetics facility. And so we are seeing how not only the things that we do typically, what you would think in the traditional weapons system acquisition piece, how we bring that into all of the other parts of the Army that bring capability across not only inside the Army but truly to the homeland when we think about what the Corps of Engineers does.
Good morning, sir. My name is Drew Lawrence. I'm a reporter with Defense Scoop. I have two questions for you. They're related. The first one is, you'd mentioned Ukraine and Israel a little while ago, and I'm wondering what lessons have you taken from those conflicts? And I understand that, broadly it's about adaptability, but what specifically have you taken from those conflicts and how are you applying them to the Army's acquisition programs now?
So I think if you were to sum up the way I see what we've learned in Ukraine, right, in Israel, right, is absolutely the dynamic battlefield we have. But I'd highlight two things. One, I think it's very difficult for platforms to hide any longer, right? We used to be able to platforms used to be able to hide, and then the second piece of that is the ability to mass, right, where we could mass together. And those two things have now become challenged based on commercial drone technology that is being built by the millions that are flying overhead, right? The sensors that can see farther and deeper into spaces, precision weapon systems that are now filled with commercial tech, absolutely makes it harder to hide and mass. And so I think when we think about sort of as we work through what the Army needs going forward, those are things that we've learned about how you sort of adapt, continue to be flexible on the battlefield, as we know that commercial tech will continue to be there.
And my second question is, you had mentioned those conflicts in conjunction with an allusion to the current one, Operation Epic Fury. As we stand today, is the Army's acquisition program adaptable enough to keep up with the changing threats that soldiers are facing in CENTCOM? If so, how? And if not, what are some of the pressure points that you're pushing on to make sure that it is? Thank you.
One of the things before I got into this job, I did for the last 4 or 5 years inside the Pentagon was I was the executive director of the Joint Rapid Acquisition Cell. JRAC was stood up in 2003, and it was really a vision of you know, truly visionary leaders like a Bob Gates, right? That established something like this, right? That's where programs like MRAP came out of. That is where when COVID came about, and there was sort of mass confusion in how we figure out needing ventilators in hospitals in days and weeks, or where sort of the acquisition behind sort of Operation Warp Speed, right? That was the JRAC partnered with the Army Acquisition Corps to go do that, right? Absolutely, I think that sort of ability to be reactive is something that I bring from that experience in the Army, has sort of led in that space, and probably since that 2004 timeframe when the JRAC was stood up. So is the Army prepared and ready? Absolutely. Is the Army executing and supporting ongoing operations from an acquisition perspective? Absolutely. Delivering exactly what our soldiers need to be as effective as they have been. So we're on the right footing. And I think, the wartime footing that Secretary Higgs has put us on is just further sort of defined and put that back into sort of the fabric of the Army Acquisition Corps, that we need to be ready, agile, and deliver. And that's what we're doing today.
Sir, thank you very much. Bill Peterson with Flagship Company. We first off, thank you for trying to speed up the acquisition process and the innovation process. We were the first winner of the Army XTech Search 9 cohort, part of the Fuse Accelerator program. Fantastic program. See everything you guys are trying to do. You've talked about the pit. We were sort of involved during the process as the sausage was being made, or as the airplane was being put together. Can you talk a little bit more about how we can now take advantage of the pit, get our technology into the hands of the warfighter? We've got essentially high-speed hovercraft that fly underneath the radar, above sonar, very hard to spot, and they can be used for contested logistics. So lots of applications for this technology, from using it as an ISR platform, EW platform, or contested logistics platform. So lots of different potential stakeholders we can be targeting.
No, that's great, and thank you for that. Right, like I said, the pit has been where we're bringing all of that innovation in. And so one of the challenges we have is, so the pit pulls together some existing funding lines, right? When we think about sort of our SBIR sitter budgets, our tech maturation lines, our manufacturing maturation budgets pulls in, and there is sort of limited funds that we had in 26, right? We have put in our 27 budget requests a significant bump in sort of pit activities to sort of expand that across more capability gaps that we have, right? And so I think you'll start to see more of those capability gaps, as you talked about. Contested logistics is a perfect one of those that is coming out here in the very near future from them, where there will be a large focus on contested logistics. And so, hopefully you're seeing, every month or so, the XTech team and the pit is putting out new competitions, new capability gaps. And would love all of industry to sort of bring their best ideas to those. And so as we get the funds and can roll those out, more funding hopefully in 27, that will just allow us to go not only broader in sort of the scope of capability gaps we're going after, but go deeper in funding those efforts.
Hey, sir, Bill Moore, former Deputy G4 of the Army, now I run General Brown's Civilian Advisory Committee for AUSA. And we're going to have a panel on the transforming Army civilians for the future at the Global Force in a few weeks. But I had a question for you on the cultural change. You know, the 25,000 or so Army civilian acquisition professionals in the Army Acquisition Corps have been raised on this environment of process-oriented, risk-averse mindsets that we really need to change. I think you've got a great start with the organizational change, but the processes, the policies, the mindset, especially with the legal side of our business and the contracting officers, that it always seemed to stymie the innovation. Any specifics on how you're going to drive cultural change here with Army acquisition professionals?
So I highlighted the data, right? So one of the things that we do now, right, is when, the traditional method of when we would kick off a new program or they would start, right, we'd have a young, APM would, build this package up, get it to his PM, build this package up, get it to his PEO, built it up, right, get up to the assault, right? One of the things is now is I don't want to see your PowerPoint. You're not building PowerPoint slides for me, right? All your data is in the system, and we're going to look at it live. So when they come in, it is no more of you got to go spend time building up to get sort of approval of concept. Your data, sort of, what are your key milestones? Where are you going? All that data is live, and we look at it live on the dashboard screen. That's how they brief it, right? And so we cut out all of those buildups of those meetings that have to take place and let us do it live. And so that has sort of changed. I will tell you, it makes it uncomfortable. Not for me, I'm good with it, but it does make it uncomfortable inside of the organization because it doesn't shape, right? We shape it together, right? And it's not just the acquisition core, right? One of the things I failed to mention about when we stood up the PAEs was we aligned all of the enabling functions that the PAEs have to need to go do their job to be accountable. Contracting, testing, resourcing, sustainment activities, FMS, right? All of those now align up under each of the PAEs. So when we do that, the contracting officer is sitting there making it with us, right? The requirements organization is sitting there with us. The ATEC individual that's going to go test it is sitting there understanding where we're going to go. All of that's done together now, right? And so that culture shift is happening a program at a time because they're seeing not only where we think we can go faster, adapt quicker, take maybe a little more risk, and have those conversations live, all looking at the same data, which is completely different than what we've ever done before.
Jim Pascaret with the last question.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, Jim
No pressure.
Pascaret, General Dynamics Land Systems. And sir, thanks for doing this today. About a month ago, the president signed out an executive order on this arms transfer strategy, and it laid out a interagency process to establish a sales catalog for international sales for programs across the department, U.S. programs, obviously, for FMS. So there'll be a whole of government approach for that, which I think is needed. I guess my question is, and it's very detailed on timeline. How is that coming together inside the Army? And we're obviously playing. I'm sure a bunch of others here. How do we plug in, and whatever you can share on that? Thank you.
No, Jim, thank you. So absolutely, if you haven't seen that EO, please go take a peek at it. But it's really thinking about how we continue to streamline now the FMS process. I sort of joke a little bit. The only process that hasn't been changed inside the Army, and I think when we look back at it, it was like 48 years when it was established, was FMS. So clearly, it must be the only process in the Army we got right because we haven't never changed it, right? And so FMS reform is absolutely ripe for some change, and that's what that EO is really trying to get after. And so, it really a couple of things, right? You mentioned the sales catalog, absolutely. So how do we think about, ensuring that there's sort of a list of offerings out there of the capability that we're growing, right? That it doesn't step on sort of the production capabilities that we're trying to grow as well, or that we're giving the right demand signals to industry as they think about, hey, I've got a balance for not only U.S. demand, but FMS and ally and partner demand, and how do I do that? Those are all challenges. Absolutely, I understand you all struggle with every day, and so really, this sort of got after that to sort of couple of things. I'll say one, get to more common programs, right? We tend to often offer non-standard programs of record. You'll hear out there, which is good, but at the same time, that can also affect assembly, manufacturing lines, right? Where you've got capabilities that are slightly different. So as you're trying to build, something for the Army, you also now mix in there, something that's slightly different for an ally or partner, and can sometimes bring the production line to a halt because of some of those differences, or slow things down, right? And so, how do we sort of build out those standards, but still offer in this product book sort of those non-standard programs of record, I will call them, which I think is a term that we don't really use anymore inside the Army, programs of record, because I don't actually know how to define that as we think about sort of constant change in our portfolios. But in general, that's sort of the view behind it. So there's a number of areas that sort of committee is going after looking at, right? When we think about some of the key areas, integrated air and missile defense is one of those areas. Long range fires is one of those areas. UAS and counter UAS is another one of those areas. So there's a couple of key areas that sort of sales book, they're calling it, is building off from. Take one step further, some of the areas we're looking at inside of the Army, and we started with UAS as an example, is building out our marketplace, right? So there was this fundamental idea, early on, of starting something called the Blue UAS, right? That sort of met the laws with around how we build a compliant, small UAS for the Army. That struggled with how do you get on the list, how do you do that, right? And so we've sort of grown that into now something called our UAS marketplace, right? And that would allow industry to put their products out there, and I think we're now north of 90 plus systems that are in there that we've established agreements with on pricing with those companies, and it allows units or other federal government agencies, other services to go in and buy off that sort of think Amazon-like website. It also allows users to give direct feedback. So, industry, don't worry, you're going to get direct feedback from the users, which I've seen some of that feedback already. It's some is good, some is not so good, but it truly does sort of think, the Amazon sort of red feedback, right? It showed up and it was broken when I took it out of the box, or it showed up and I was able to turn it on and it worked perfect, right? Like, you get all that instant feedback for industry. From a pricing perspective, that's only visible to the government, right? So knowing what the government, what we buy it for, is you're figuring out, whether from a unit or from an agency of what you want to buy and how much money you've got. So, but all of the comments and the products and sort of the specifications of the systems is open to everybody, and so that will actually roll out across the Army wide in the next month or so. It's now sort of internal to Army, but we'll roll it out to the wider Department of War. But I see something like that, right? That's where we started US. But I see what this EO and what we're building towards is sort of that sales brochure that would do that sort of same type of marketplace approach. And so I think, those are sort of the first few areas, starting with integrated air and missile defense, long range fires, UAS, counter UAS. A lot of those capabilities we constantly hear from allies and partners that they want in on.
Well, please join me in thanking Honorable Ingraham for that great discussion and information. Saw a lot of people taking notes, writing copious notes. So, hey, before we go, just a few upcoming events. Today at noon, we've got a virtual a series on AI and advancing Army cyber priorities. You can sign up at ausa.org for that. Again, a virtual at noon today. Our 17 March coffee series with the SEC Army had to be postponed, but we'll get word out to you. Will be rescheduled. Global Force coming up in a couple of weeks, 24 to 26 March in Huntsville, on track to be the best Global Force ever. You don't want to miss that. And then 1 April, right here, we'll have a hot topic on installation reform and installation, entire day with experts on what's going on in advancing our installations across the Army. And finally, you don't want to miss Land Pack. I think it's a 16th year Indo-Pacific focus, 12 to 14 May in Hawaii, Land Pack coming up. I'm sure all of you in here are members of AUSA. We have over 2 million members now. So join the team if you're not, see what you're missing, able to help and support the Army every day. Really proud of over 2 million members. And I would just ask, during this time of conflict, please keep those servicemen and women in harm's way in our thoughts and prayers during this conflict as you depart today. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Army Day.
Sir, thank you.